Well, today we have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Toby Lampard. And that name may ring a bell, but it may not be the only Lampard that gets interviewed. And nor is the Lampard family the only one that's been multiple interviewed. So we'll look forward to see how that turns out. But the reason for interviewing Toby is because the Lampard family have been here since 1940, and their roots in Red Deer go back a long time. And both of our parents were optometrists and practiced their lifetime in Red Deer. And Dad, in particular, got significantly involved in the development and construction of buildings and replacement of some buildings, and over the years, which has been carried on particularly by Toby in more recent years. So to hear a bit about and to go over some of the commercial development of Red Deer, Toby has joined us. But Toby, perhaps you'd first comment on what brought Mother and Dad to Red Deer.
Well, it was a job at Eaton's that would get Dad closer to Calgary, where he wanted to go. Because that was his home city, and his objective was to get to Calgary, live in Calgary. And this job enabled them to come close to Calgary. They had met in Winnipeg doing their qualifications to be optometrists in the Prairie Provinces. And as I'm sure somewhere is said, that the day they arrived here was the day that you and your brother were delivered. So that gives the yardstick as to how long had been in town. That was one of the things. Dad had come to town and found a place to rent on 56th Street, and he said to Mom, got a hold of her and Trossachs and said, come on over, I've got a place to live. And she came by train and said maybe I should go find a doctor. Dad, and that started the time frame of the family in Red Deer. And it's gone on for a long time.
Well, Dad signed up during the war. And,
he skipped town. Mom
left Red Deer with a couple of challenges. A pair of twins to begin with, and earning an income and surviving during the war.
Yeah, it was a test. What did Mother have? She had 6 or was it 7 babysitters for that 2 challenges that came in a package?
I've heard almost double that figure, but depends on how you count, I guess.
Yes, but she had the office. She started the practice because Dad had come to town with a job with Eaton's. And then, as I understand it, they'd made the decision that maybe Red Deer was a pretty good place and they might stay. So they got a hold of Mother's old friends, the Hermonts, who happened to be Imperial Optical, and put some equipment on order to start an optical practice in Red Deer, and the people at Eaton's found out, so that was the one time in Mother's life that she was fired. He just told her to leave. But when the equipment arrived, they set up stock, and up until last year, there's been a Lampard playing optometrist in Red Deer for that period. So that's from 40.
That's 80 years, over 80 years.
82 years, no question. That's that won't happen in many communities.
No, and their combined practice years are over 100 between Mother and Dad.
Well over.
But I wanted to focus on more of the building and construction activities that Dad was involved with, and I guess they started after the war when he decided not to go into practice but to build a house.
Well, which came first, the cabin or the house?
The house came first.
Okay, I'd never had the answer to that question. I thought that was it. Thank you.
It was built on the money they'd saved during the war, the two of
I
them.
thought a big chunk of that went into the car that he bought.
Um,
She was not aware of it.
do you mean during the war?
Yes.
Yeah, he overpaid for a Pontiac, which they kept for a couple of years, so he got charged for paying extra. But that at least got Mother a car, and she was able to get to work.
Yeah, and to haul two kids around.
So
Yes.
Dad's construction activities, although they were just the house in Red Deer and the cabin at Sylvan Lake, which he built in about a month, a little over a month.
Well, he had such qualified support up there working with him.
Yeah, two
Oh,
kids to swap mosquitoes
two
off his
young
back.
kids. Right, I could hear his voice from here as he was telling them what to do next, what he needed.
Yeah, true, in the obvious way.
Yeah. Well, then what happened, my understanding is the social side of things with those that came back from the war. They all had things, and a lot of them had the motivation to stay in Red Deer and to improve on Red Deer. And so Father, being the kind of thinker that he was, had no problem in conversing with and committing others to joining him in the construction project that they got into. And they built a number of buildings when they might have had somebody who needed an office or something, and they put the building up and filled it and kept it for quite some time. Over time, I guess the Balmoral building is the one that I think of, and it started out as a partnership with a number of people.
It's
right downtown.
now called Town Center Mall.
I think I know where that name came from. This is my decision. But over time, others wanted their money out, and so Father would be saying, yes, okay, we can do that, and the negotiation would be had, and another partner was out of the project to the point that he had acquired the full building. And it's the building so many people in Red Deer will remember was because Dr. Lyle Smith was in the basement. And as far as I was concerned, forever. I can remember when I was 10 going 11, I got a job at Gates Cornet, and I peddled drugs for 7 years. It was a rather entertaining lifestyle, middle of the winter out peddling drugs. And I can remember one time the cops pulled me over and told me to take my 3-speed bike and put it in the garage because I shouldn't be out riding that in the winter. But peddling drugs is peddling drugs. It's no fun if you don't have a bike.
A little longer to do house calls.
Oh, I'll tell you, when I stop and think about it, peddling all over and some of those rutted streets, scary. And sometimes I'd get a little help. Mom might come and help me if we were hitting that 40 below. Or Bob McGregor would come out of the basement where the wholesale was, and he might deliver a few. But it was an interesting time, and I can remember standing in the alley looking at that hole where Town Center Mall is now, when it was under construction. And there were 3 or 4 other buildings that were similar to that. And I never
Dad, when he, I guess, signed off on the design of that building, he certainly had the future of Red Deer in mind, because he built the building so well that instead of it being 2 stories, it could have been 5.
Yep. Had a place for the elevator to go in, and he had the ability to slap 2 more on it. But being typical of those days, there was no parking, and eventually, to the detriment, it wasn't the easiest building to fill, and it was nice to see the end of it.
Well, that wasn't the only building or major building that Dad built.
No, there was the Imperial Block.
There's a bit of a history to that. I think that's the building that Shaw are working out of now. And I visited them the other day. But that was originally the site of the AMA building, the first AMA building in Red Deer,
The Imperial Block.
which got named after Imperial Optical when the Hermonts joined Dad in building the building.
Yes, yes. They had been in the top floor of the town center mall. And had the other building, again, providing places for people to practice, businesses to be run out of the downtown area. And that was central area. That was the only place buildings or development went.
Yeah, he managed to get TD as a major tenant.
Yeah.
That provided substance and longevity to the building for a while.
Yes, for a while, and I remember the end of that while they made the decision to move, had the other facility built, and they moved to it, but they kept that spot rented for some time, so we didn't put another bank in behind. And old Joe, the shoemaker, who had 7 ashtrays around his shoemaking shop, managed to go off to get something to drink and left a burning cigarette in there and started a fire in the building. And the furriers upstairs were really concerned about us, and so was I, because we were going to have to pay to take the smell out of the furs that they had in their shop. And I was a quick trip to the lease and see what to do, because TD had moved out, but they were still paying rent. And if the place wasn't habitable by the bank, they'd stop paying the rent on us at that stage, and we still had quite a few months left on the lease. So it was, whoo, all those drapes were out of there immediately. They were laundered and hung back up, and TD didn't have a chance to say, hey, aroma is such that it's not habitable, and get out of their lease.
Well, I guess an empty bank smells, but paper money doesn't.
Well, I'd like to think they had most of it put in the vault for the night. But yeah, it was interesting. And well, there were a couple of other buildings, and I can't put my name on the other one where the AMA had been. But it was always nice for Father to be involved with those organizations, so when they needed an office, he could say, I have a building with the space that's just right for you.
He joined the AMA about 1949. I remember he was looking forward to his 50th anniversary certificate just before he passed away. Dad was involved in quite a few other things at the time, just as a person interested in the community and giving back to the community. And I think he ran for election as an alderman. Was appointed to the hospital board and became its chairman and presided over the second significant expansion of the hospital.
Yes, yes. I can remember his line one time. He says, they always get me on the board when they've got somebody running some position that they want to get rid of, and they figure that I can fire them better than other people can. So he fired quite a few people over time and hired new people and provided some direction for the operation of those facilities. It's very nice to say that you can run something, but sometimes running the day-to-day and the people is a small part of what the whole business is out to do for strategy.
But he also was willing to stay with the challenge if he had a vision and so on, as he did with the AMA. He went on to eventually become the president of the AMA, first person outside Edmonton or Calgary to become its president. And in the lead up to it, I recall with another former Red Deer person by the name of Freddie Jenner had gone and looked at the future of the AMA and decided they should get into the insurance business. And Dad went down to the States to tour automobile companies, associations that have got involved in that business successfully to bring the idea back to to Alberta and implement it. And of course now it's a successful component of the AMA.
Yeah, it was diversification, and he had a clientele, so let's catch them and put it to work. Take advantage of that membership.
Yeah.
And that did work. I don't know how the hike progressed as he went up the optometric chain as well. But being somebody that had ideas, thought stuff through, and I can sure imagine how he was at board meetings and eventually got himself elected to the chair there as well.
He was president
Yeah.
in the early 50s, I think. I don't.
Yeah.
He
Well,
seemed to be
would
able to handle or juggle a lot of balls at once, but the primary reason that he could was because he could say no to the office today and Mother could go down and replace him.
That's exactly where I was going to go. He had this little support staff at home. I really don't know how that all worked because, well, she had a couple of kids. They must have been a bit of a stretch when she was going off to the office. She would have had to have, but then after what she did during the war, she always probably had a pipeline of daycare services for her children. That was an interesting time for her, needless to say.
She
Needless to say.
used to say that the wartime was the hardest time that she'd ever had. She had in her life because she had so many responsibilities to look after, and of course the unknown about where was Dad, at the front, especially in the last months, I guess, of the war.
Yeah, well, when he had that accident, that didn't help a lot.
No, it was an almost fatal accident at the end of the war. Very true. Anyway, the company evolved, and you want to talk a bit about some of the other construction activities you've been involved in or have headed up over the years?
Oh boy. Well, this morning we were having a meeting with the management on the hotel, which was rather an interesting game.
You have a hotel?
Town Place Suites, and it's, I guess in hindsight, I stop and think and say, I always saw some dirt that I liked, and I would sit there and say, what can be done with it, and might buy it for the future or buy it for something else. And we bought 2 or 3 parcels along the highway and flipped them for rather nice returns. And then we had one that was there thinking about it, and we thought that's the hotel row going to be there. And we had 2 lots. And so we had to make a decision of A, whether we build a hotel, and B, which one we would build, which site. And took a look at them, and one site was superior to the other, so we had an A site and a B site, and thought, well, if we're going to go in there and do something, we should do the B site and get rid of that lot. It's going to be the hardest to deal with, and so that's where the hotel is. And we ended up hanging on to the other site for a while, looking for somebody to come along. It wasn't hotel time in Red Deer. And so somebody showed up, though, and bought half of that site, and that's where Horizon Medical is now. And then while they were under construction, I guess somewhat surprised at the response to the fact there was going to be a medical building put there. And they said, we could probably fill this in more. So they executed their option and bought the second 1.5 acres. So they still have that undeveloped. Nice parking lot, of course, which they need. And so when they do develop it, they're going to have to go underground and put underground parkade and then build their building.
These buildings are near 67th Avenue and 67th Street and Highway.
Highway 2. They look over Highway 2. Yeah. That was why. And again, as I say, I had no qualms when somebody had some highway land for sale because they've been the developer. I was often saying, all right, that's a nice site, nice size. Maybe we should buy that. And did some of them in partnership outside the company and some of them with friends who had thought process or had some coin in their pocket and they were prepared to put it to work. So that's that one. And then Oh, then another interesting project was this lumberjay site. When it
That's
came,
just north of the property, a
it
couple
was
of
the
blocks
Telus
north.
building is what it was,
Yeah.
and it's there on Taylor Drive, 7419 Taylor Drive, and it was. AGT was looking at getting out, and I had somebody, we were at an opening of a project, and somebody said to me, Toby, I can't believe you haven't bought that one. I said, oh, I hadn't really looked at it. I'll go have a look. And so, had a little discussion with the crew and said, the thing I love about it is it's a land with too much dirt.
Was this the Telus site?
Yes,
Yeah.
and we had been involved with, and I'd watched so many situations where somebody had a building, you could have done a lot of work on vehicles or whatever there, and you couldn't get in and out of the lot with a semi. It just didn't have enough dirt. So here was a site where there was a lot of dirt. So we got that, and went along for a while, got it all rented out, and I'm trying to remember who took the rest of the building for a while. Oh yes, when we had the vacancy when AGT was ready to move out, finally, the fellow across the street had always had his eyes on it, but he didn't have the cash. At the time, we executed an offer and bought it. And so there we had, and we sold the building off to him. We kept all the excess dirt, 3.5 acres, and he paid us what we paid for the whole package. So we got rid of a large building, which was hell at times to deal with. I can remember when we were needing appraisal, we had the appraiser, he told me at the end, he says, I had to go back to that building 3 times because I couldn't figure it out. In my head, I couldn't remember it because it was done in 3 zones, 3 fire sections, fire zones, so that they didn't have to have sprinkler systems in the building. And then we kept the dirt, and over time, we developed a strip mall in there. And it's turned out to be a good investment for us as well. It has been good that way. And
is that the site where you eventually built Points West?
Correct. Yes.
You want to tell us a bit about that project and how it fit within the long-term care field of Red Deer?
That's a chunk of craziness at times. I had this guy that was working with us, and he was a bit of a promoter, never any money, but had ideas on it, and came along with the thought process that we could, on the land that was left, do a tower for long-term care, continuing care in there. And so we did phase 1, which had 25 independent beds and 114 care beds.
Was that the largest long-term care facility in Red Deer at the time?
Yeah.
This is what, 6 or 7 years ago?
A little more than that, because it's about 6 years ago we did phase 2, which was another 150 beds, and it's all tied together as one project with one kitchen to service all the food, and away we go. So we got 239 beds there, which we still got those damned independent suites, which don't seem to run out very well. We seem to run about a 60% occupancy there. And on the rest, overall, we get up to the 75 a lot and get a little higher and then come back down. Nowadays, the problem is staffing because care workers are hard to find.
Especially and the COVID problems.
Yeah, COVID sure didn't help. Surely didn't help. We had a number of times that COVID caught us there. But, the worst thing is you do all those things to protect everybody in the site, and then some family member comes in and drops a little COVID on you again. So you get a little run with the isolation and trying to get rid of it. Yeah, they became very good at managing COVID sites. And so we still have 2.2 acres out there that we're looking at doing something with, and haven't come up with the right idea and what fits there. But it could be, I can't see extending that care facility, but it is one option. It's not built to be tied on, which is too bad, because then it may be something that we could pop into. But yes, we've got that 289 bed facility in there, and continue to have fun with the occupancy. That's by definition a fairly high turnover residential site for somewhat elderly people, because they're wanting a little more care than they get at home, and the family enjoys having their family member move in as a resident, and we provide the care, and they can come and be family and not have to spend their time concerned about medications and the doctor's visit, all the other things that elderly people, here's one, keep finding out about, going back for that medical treatment. But that's a rather interesting site, and it's always fun there. I guess I should take a few minutes and say thank you to Service.
Is that the credit union?
Yes. I have had a very good working relationship there. There have been occasions where we've ended up picking up properties or doing things, and you sit there and say, these guys just aren't working for us. They're not working as a partner. They're out there trying to take their slice and be a little difficult on it at times. So Service has been there for us many times when it's come to funding the projects. And because they have so much of our product, they probably go a little further than they would for anybody else. That and the history. In the history, their comfort level, it will be there.
It's a company that has some strong Red Deer roots.
Oh, yes. I can remember when there were 3 people that ran that place. Arlene was just a beautiful lady. I can remember buying that Slumberjay building. Ex-CGT, they call it Slumberjay area now. But I stopped in to see her, and I said, I haven't got much to show you, but this is what I'm thinking of doing, and wondering if we could make something work. And she looked at me and said, I don't think there's a problem, Toby. We can make it work. So all of a sudden, we had the funds to buy that AGT building. Less than half an hour, I was in that office. Beautiful working relationship, and those are the things you build for, so that when you have something that needs a stamp decision, you can deal with it and do it.
It does point out how integrated or how interrelated financing is with construction and vision.
In that case, it was just buying, but acquiring something, and we did it, and we had 10% occupancy by AGT, and then we had to go and find somebody for the rest of it. But we got it done, and as I say, we did the building on the land. That site was, it was something that just so fit me at that stage, because I'd been so frustrated with buildings overdeveloped, overbuilt, not enough yard, not thinking forward to that. And basically what I like at this stage is a minimum of 10,000 square feet and 2.5 acres. Because you can get the parking for the equipment there, and you can have just a little corner for a couple of offices and operate inside.
Is Red Deer at all unique in that? I'm sure that the people like the council have a set ratio of so much parking to how many people are working in the building.
They have no, it's a per square foot basis. It comes along. And nobody knows who's going to be in those buildings, what's going to happen. If somebody's running a business there, or if it's a satellite off something in Edmonton or Calgary or elsewhere. And all of a sudden you've got the receptionist, a manager, or maybe somebody else to run the workforce. And it's basically a parking lot for all the equipment. There's an awful lot of that. Now, at this stage in the ball game, Craig and I are talking about this place and that place. And he's got a formula. He says, I want to take half that space and demolish it. Here we got a building and we've got 20% of it as office. We don't need that much office. Nobody wants that much office in Red Deer. We're going to have to crash that much office to get a reasonable rate out of it.
Which site are you referring to? Is this a common problem in Red Deer?
Yeah, we got two of them right now. I'm just trying to pick them out, but they're about that 10, 12,000 with too much office. It's called Warehouse 14, where we had Oculus. Here's a big lot. They can pull. There's 4 overhead doors they can pull in from the back and pull their equipment in. And there's office all the way across the front. So let's crash that office, get rid of it. They've got something else, somebody coming along looking at it now. They can put something that's stationary in there, the mechanics area, but there's just too much office. And on 2 levels, who wants to walk up and down?
But in terms of Red Deer as opposed to another community, whether it be, like Lethbridge or Medicine Hat, these would be common problems or common opportunities, depending on how you look at them.
You've got how our business is being run these days. And we've had COVID. And we found out we don't need to have that office staff. We can do things by Zoom. And so we end up with an awful lot of meetings, management to staff, from Edmonton, Calgary, wherever, to deal with situations. They may sometimes appear more so on site, but there's not that need. With our various communication systems, cell phone first and the Zoom second, people don't need to have the offices. And a lot of staff seldom make the office, or they get in there for a chat with a superior twice a week, whatever, and away they go. It's been quite a change. The office structure is not needed to the same degree. The businesses don't need to have that kind of gathering. Quite interesting.
Toby,
it is a big change.
Can we look back even a little further than just the recent changes because of COVID, and look at Red Deer as a community? And I'm thinking of a comparable basis with maybe Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, or other centers roughly the same size. But Red Deer's always had a problem developing because it's between Calgary and Edmonton, and is very significantly affected by them. And how they look at Red Deer and how they use Red Deer, whether it's for entertainment or what it is. But can you look back and kind of outline a little bit of some of the challenges that people who stayed in Red Deer have had, just because a lot of the impacts on the community are not based on the usual factors of growth and nearby industrial opportunities and so on. And of course, part of that is on one hand is the impact of the oil and gas industry as well. On the other hand is Red Deer growing up with a downtown that really has remained dormant for decades. I hope I haven't asked.
What kind of industry do you want to talk about? An office-based sites, more so in the downtown, and there's no need for a lot more of them. We used to have banks that are empty. People have moved out. AMO and CIBC have said, we don't need to have a bank downtown. People don't need to go to the bank like they used to. They transfer the funds, away we go. You've got the businesses that are in Red Deer, an awful lot of them go out where the cheap dirt is and where it's easy to get on the highway. There was a point in time Red Deer developed with that highway. I can remember as a kid being at the optical office looking out the window, and that was Highway 2 going right by the office building, the Royal Bank building, where the
Correct.
office was.
Yeah.
And so you were looking at all those trucks and cars that were going from Edmonton and Calgary, were going through, and people would stop off more. Then the bypass gets built, and all of a sudden there's a reduction in that need. And
You get a redevelopment called Gasoline Alley.
yeah, you know, it happened out Taylor Drive before that. You know, that was in Gasoline Alley, no question. An awful lot. You get enough land to service your business, and it was a hell of a lot cheaper. And you could get a site and have access, use it for expansion in the future, or sell it off. That's just the way it's grown. So people don't need to get into downtown Red Deer. So I take a look. I walked here, and I look at empty premises along the way. You know, there's not an awful lot of places. You know, Red Deer looks big growth project going on down here. Well, somebody convinced the government that they needed to have a big jail and courthouse.
Because they hadn't built the original one strong and high enough.
Well, they didn't build predicated on an expansion. And so they were on a site which they couldn't really expand on, and they couldn't go up either because somebody decided to save a bit of money and cut the foundations down. You know, you talk about making those decisions, but when Dad did Town Center Mall, it's set for another 2 stories. The elevator shaft is there. The other 2 floors are there because downtown Red Deer was where it was to be in those days.
Back in the 1950s.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was later 50s, 57, 50, I'd say 58, 59, when that was under construction. And yes, everybody'd stay downtown. But not everybody had the wheels like we have today. You know, everybody has their own car. Bus system still doesn't get used very well in Red Deer because we have nodes of employment all over the place. But it's somebody comes with a business. They've got ideas on growth, who they're going to service, how handy it's going to be, and they want to have extra dirt so that when they grow bigger, they do their expansions on their own lots. And the city has gone forth and said, we will service that land. And we will have it set so that we can continue to service more land in those areas. And so businesses are so much easier, especially on the north side of town, Taylor and up that way. South, no, it's a lot softer on the business side.
I hope Red Deer could be looked upon as a bit of an unusual community in that the highest building in town is the courthouse.
It does say something about where we are. Yeah. We are moving, and our neighbor, ex-RCMP, made a point very quickly of notifying me that over there, because we're on 19th Street, was a landfill, and beside that was one of those areas where the homeless camp. And so the foot traffic through our neighborhood is a little heavy in the evenings, so we have to be cognizant of that, and nothing sits in the cars to make them be breaking into the vehicles, and the vehicles get parked inside if you can at all, and just be very protective. It's one of the problems we have, and it was, I think of various cures to the problem we have with all the homeless, and I'm not sure. It was a long time ago. One of the person's solutions for that was collect the turkeys and put them on a bus to Vancouver in the middle of the winter, and you got rid of your problem. And they got a much warmer place to hang out.
Ouch, ouch.
Oh, yeah, well, it works.
I wonder if we can generalize a bit from that. Those are some, I guess, the isolated community challenges, but what about the challenges facing Red Deer right now? Given its importance in the oil and gas servicing field and the economy of the country and the way it's being managed.
Well, I know we got people like Trudeau who like to pick our pocket and distribute it through the rest of the country, primarily Quebec, somewhat the Maritimes.
You sound like a Westerner.
Oh, really? Amazing, isn't it, how that works? But there has been the fact that they think that there should be a surtax on businesses in Alberta because they're just doing so well. You know, and it's not right. They should have all that money and those resources, and those people further east don't have any of that, and they need to pick our pocket to fund a lot of things. And another one that comes along that I'm having a real problem with is the number of people that think, I don't really have to work. Why should I have to work? We went through COVID, and some of them didn't work, and they found ways different programs to latch onto. You know, and I'm just in the last couple of weeks, about 4 times, I've come up with the fact that those guys down east gave us some money when things were tough with COVID. And they're nice enough to let us keep a third of it, but they want 2/3 of it back very quickly, or they're going to put a surtax on it for interest. So anybody that got some of that helpful funding has got a $40,000 bill coming up. Nice at Christmas, you know, but you better be thinking along that line because they gave it and they will take it back.
You're reminding me of rather insightful presentation given by a professor from the U of A who said, when you look at the economy of a country or an area, you pick out those areas that are likely and have a good future prospect, because it's a lot easier to take a company that's doing well and increase its business by 30, 50 or whatever percent than it is to take a very backward country that has no significant foundation for growth and try and expand it by that amount. So when you take money through taxation and so on from the wealthy country, you cut down their opportunity to expand and you give it to areas that are less likely to expand or be able to use it.
Or be successful.
True.
Yeah. Yes, if there's opportunities, people have a tendency to move to them, to provinces, locations where there is the potential to be successcul.
What do you think some of the major challenges that Red Deer faces now? You were commenting earlier on how much the population has been fluctuating, which it has never done before.
Well, we're at situations where there's very few vacancies.
Is that true of Red Deer now?
It is now. Its population popped back up. It went down, and there were quite a few vacancies. And just
through the COVID period.
Yeah. And she's jumped back up. Businesses, are there businesses coming to town? Periodically, there's another one. And there's somebody that says, hey, I can go out on my own instead of working for so-and-so and start the same kind of business or a specialty side of that business so that I can be self-employed, have my own business. And I also happen to be capable of marketing it. There are a few people like that are taking the risk. They're saying, I am not going to be able to make enough, store enough, that I can live without working, that I can retire. I'm working for myself. I do not have a government job where there's going to be a pension at the time I hit 25 years. Then I can pack her in and get a job somewhere else if I feel like it and build another pension. And there are numbers that have done that over time. But there's a lot of people that have been transferred around in their large corporate organization. Here I'm thinking a lot about bankers. And it's become time for them to move on, and they've just take a look, chat with their wife, and go back to the office and look around again and say, no, I don't want to be transferred out. I want to stay in Red Deer. This is a nice balance here. I'm not in a city that has all the big accoutrements. If I want to go to a show, I can jump in the car in an hour and 3/4. I can be at the Jube and see whatever I want to see. And I can make a choice whether I go north or south to different Jubes to take a look. They're about equidistant. Amazing how that works. But it's a nice balance. You know, we've got the lake out there. It's easy to the mountains. I just wish it was a little closer to the good ski hills, but that's Toby talking. But I go skiing a lot, and I ski because I love it, and that's an important thing for me. And I look at those people that are in Winnipeg or something like that, and they come to the mountains and they say, "Oh, I wish this was somewhere closer." And some of them start moving because of that. Just the balance, the different seasons, what goes on. And especially if you're one of the government programs or a bank or something, you can push for a move to a place like that. It's if you're planning, it's nice not to be in the big city. And there's smaller communities around here, which are usually too small. But if you have some historical association with them, maybe you move back to them. But this is a nice balance in Red Deer.
You're reminding me of Dad's concerns when he was starting the United Way in Red Deer. One of the problems was that the people you wanted to rely on had a life expectancy in Red Deer of 2, at the very most 4 years, and they were gone. Good people on their way up in their organization,
corporate tree.
But you couldn't get stability. And one of the big changes that's occurred in Red Deer is that because it's not a popular, it's an enjoyed, appreciated community. Not just the people, but the opportunities. And as a result, has much more stability to it than it used to. But there's still things you can do, like enjoy the pass system, like I managed to yesterday doing the Terry Fox run.
You did that. Good for you. Good for you. I wish I had that in me anymore, but it's definitely not here.
Well, it was nice to see hundreds of people out, especially for fundraising for
beautiful
cancer.
Day too.
Yeah,
It was.
it was all around.
We were seeding lawn because it was going to rain today. So we were leveling black dirt and then seeding it, re-raking it all, and then telling everybody to stay off it.
Well,
Knowing, and as Craig says, no, it's an iterative process. As it catches, the settlement will be a little different. You're going to have to come back again and seed in some black dirt to level it up a little. So it's just a nicer lawn than it was. And you may do this 2 or 3 times. Look at it as being an annual.
well, you could do like we did for one of the original tennis courts in Red Deer. You take a roller and fill it full of water and then roll it.
Hey,
And that was
one there
modern
yesterday.
equipment.
Craig comes with one. And he's got a very fancy rake with 3-inch tines on it, which is really nice for leveling out the black dirt. These people that are organized, they get these projects orchestrated very well. You do all the bull work, and I'll come along for the finish and make it look good.
Those are the kind of talents any community relies on.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Toby, it's been nice having a chat about things that we know in common, experiences we've had and share by being members of the same family. But your observations are always astute and long-term, and your visions have turned out to be correct in investment ways so well.
Well, one of the things that's come to mind, which hasn't been there in a long, long time, was those hours in the steam bath.
In our home in Red
Deer. In our home in Red Deer. Dad had found a boiler on a building being demolished and put an addition on the house and got a steam room in there for a steam room. And we would sit after work, or we'd be working in the yard or something, and I would, being the youngest, often get the call, go light the boiler. And so I'd go light the boiler, and when it was about, Mom would say, hey, supper in 3/4 of an hour, we'd head in and have a steam bath. Shower on the way out, and we smelled nice and clean when we went for dinner with Mom. But it was the discussions there. I just wish that I had been a different age in there and a different thought process.
And to learn from your father.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, when you stop and think
the
about
friends
it.
he would bring in for a steam bath.
Yeah, yeah. And when you stop and think that I sit in the middle of brothers 7 years older and 7 years younger, and there was an awful lot of information could have been transferred there about various and sundry decisions you make in life. But I have to give Mom and Dad credit for all the time they must have spent at us, because there was never a question about who was going where for university. Well, me, I guess, for a while. And what we were doing. But I was in, that's the old ball game. I was in a real quandary. Not a real quandary. It was simple for me, but I was here out of grade 12 for the first year of the college. So when they built the fourth wing down at the comp, and that was Red Deer College for a few years, I was in year one.
And then from there, A, weren't many students in the class, and B, there weren't many students in the class who passed.
Well, there's always that. Yeah.
Were there any students that passed?
Oh, I got out of there in one piece. Oh, I flunked English, so yeah, there's always that. But it was 109 or 113 of us. And that includes the part-timers that were coming in night classes. It's just, when I thought of it, I had the compliments to the Dawes, to Harold, on pushing that whole system and getting the Red Deer College started. Important people in the community, getting things done, recognizing needs and getting them done, learning the bureaucracy in Edmonton, if that's where it is usually, and working with that system or through that system and getting the development in Red Deer because of it. And I think that's one of the things that comes along as people that have over time had to go to Edmonton or Calgary for what they needed for product or services.
Or education.
But I'm thinking back to where we were earlier about what helped Red Deer grow, but getting out there and being able to reproduce what was being done in Edmonton or Calgary in Red Deer for the Red Deer industry. And that's where a lot of businesses got going. And there's been a lot of those people that have done quite well because they learned and brought the business to Red Deer. And the Dawes, the Dawes. I don't know that you would have ever got some of those drinks at the Dawes when Marion and Jay would come to town, and Dorothy, and they'd be giving lectures at the teachers' convention and then go off to the Dawes because they're very close friends, not far from home. They
would come down as U of A professors to give professional development presentations here in Red Deer at the request of the Dawes. It certainly kept the educational people here in Red Deer at the front end of what was happening conceptually in education.
It was good people.
Well,
yes.
Can we end on that note? And thank you very much, Toby, for
have fun picking through all that. It's interesting when you can ask the question and then all of a sudden be told you answer it instead of me. You know more about that than I do. It's good.
It'll happen even more so with Tom.
Yes.